to 114, even a draw. The decision.
Yes, it's a draw.
Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome to The Puncher's Point. This is a fight that I've been excited for a very long time. It's a fight that I've been waiting for a very long time. We got Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn taking place in Tottenham Stadium in England. Now, even though there's no belt on the line, there's something far more important, which is legacy. And in order to understand that, you got to go back in time to when their fathers fought, Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. Now, before we get into the fight breakdown, the first time Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn fought, Eubank Sr. came out on top with the win. The second time they fought, it was a draw. And it seemed like there was some unfinished business between the fathers. But it seems like that the sons are going to finish that business. Now, you want to take blood out of it? Fine. These two do not like each other. They were supposed to fight a few years ago, and then Conor Benn popped for PEDs. Now, since Eubank Jr. has been going on his run ever since pairing up with Jonathan Banks, he's been a completely different fighter. Now they're finally going to fight. There was obviously the big egg incident where Eubank Jr. slapped Conor Benn with the egg. And there's a whole bunch of drama. I mean, obviously their fathers aren't the biggest fans of each other. Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, they don't like each other. It's even Eubank Sr. and Eubank Jr. are having drama because Eubank Sr. didn't agree with the actions that he had. Overall, it's a whole drama show. But regardless, we're going to get into this. We're going to break down both fighters. We're going to give betting odds. And then after that, we're going to find out who really has the best shot to win this fight. And then I'm going to give my prediction. So with that being said, let's start off with Eubank Jr. First of all, we're going to start off with his strengths. The number one strength for Eubank Jr. is his jab. He has a quick jab, and that jab sticks. When he hits you with that jab, he's constantly using it to set things up. And no matter what phase of his career that he has been in, because Eubank Jr., let's be real, he's 35 years old, but it seems like he's in his prime as of right now. No matter what phase of his career that he is in, that jab has always been a big factor. His bread and butter has always been the right uppercut. That right uppercut is a thing of beauty. And when that lands on any opponent, they're in a lot of trouble. And he's fought some great opponents. He's fought Billy Joe Saunders. He's fought guys like Liam Smith twice, George Groves. He's fought some very, very good competition. And that uppercut has always been a game changer for Eubank Jr. The other thing about Eubank Jr. is he's constantly moving. You see, Eubank Jr., when he steps into the ring, he treats a fight like like a marathon. He treats it like a sprint. From round 1 to round 12, he is constantly going 120 miles per hour. And you got to respect that out of any fighter. The thing is about Eubank Jr., he is not going to slow down as rounds start to progress. He's going to pick it up. And the thing is about Eubank Jr., he's all gas, no brakes. He constantly fights at 120 miles per hour from round 1 to round 12. And let me tell you something. When you have a guy that's constantly that relentless, constantly putting pressure on you like that, that's a dangerous fighter to be against in the ring. The other thing about Eubank Jr., he's got power on both of his hooks. He's got power on both of his hooks, and the truth is he can knock you out with any hook. But in my opinion, I would rely more on that right uppercut if I was Eubank Jr. But regardless, you got to watch out for both hooks if you're Conor Benn. He's got very slick head movement. You see, throughout the years, his style has changed. In his early career, he kind of had that old-fashioned fight style. He reminded his stance and the way he fought. It reminded me a little bit of Joe Louis. Joe Louis was also like that, where he had like an awkward stance, but he was very, very good with the defense, very good with footwork, very good with head movement. And then as Eubank Jr.'s career started to progress, he kind of started taking the Roy Jones Jr. approach. Hands down, relying more on your head movement and footwork, athleticism, all that type of stuff. And now since he's been with Jonathan Banks, it's been a lot more polished. So with that being said, he's great with slips and counters. He's very good at forcing opponents to make mistakes and then responding with counters and slips. He's very good at dodging and weaving out of the way and then finding an opening on an opponent and punching them and beating them to the punch. That's what I will say about Eubank Jr. And then last but not least, great endurance. Like I said, from round 1 to round 12, that guy is a threat. You can't take him lightly. With that being said, the weaknesses for Eubank Jr. Well, first off, Eubank Jr., he leaves the left side of his face way too open, too much. And it's been a lot better since he paired up with Jonathan Banks. Jonathan Banks, his trainer, has been absolutely amazing for his career. But before Jonathan Banks, he left the left side of his face wide open a lot. And that's still a tendency that Chris Eubank Jr. tends to have. The other thing about Chris Eubank Jr. is he leans with his head down when coming forward, and that is a big, big problem. See, he relies so much on head movement that there'll be times where he lowers his head, or he'll come forward and he'll lower his head. And I'm like, that's an easy counter for an uppercut. And I think in this fight against somebody like Conor Benn, he has to watch out for that type of stuff. His footwork can get a little bit sloppy now, even though he's fast, even though the way he moves, he's constantly charging forward. He's relentless. He's moving 120 miles per hour. Sometimes that footwork gets a little bit sloppy. And when that footwork gets a little bit sloppy, Chris Eubank Jr. tends to kind of tie his feet together. It seems like he almost has two left feet when he's in that ring. He'll tend to lift his foot off the ring, off the mat, which I don't think as a fighter you should be doing. He tends to kind of start stepping opposed to moving on your toes. He doesn't he sometimes his footwork is not the most graceful, so to say. We're gonna put it that way. And then last but not least, he runs into counters. Now I will say this, Chris Eubank Jr., he has a chin. I mean, he's only been knocked out once, and that was to Liam Smith. Liam Smith knocked him down twice, and he got back up, and the ref stopped the fight. But Chris Eubank Jr. has a chin. He's taken some of his opponent's best shots, and he's constantly moved forward, but he runs into counters way too much. Now, with that being said, let's go to Conor Benn. Conor Benn's undefeated, 23-0 with 14 knockouts, but obviously he tested positive for PEDs, and ever since then the power's kind of gone down. So that's been a weakness of his. But what are the strengths? Well, I will say this: his hooks. Both of them got great hooks. They can hit you with the left, they can hit you with the right. It don't matter. Both of these guys, they are great when it comes to their hooks, whether it's the left or the right, and those are definitely some of the strengths that these two have in common. And there's very few, but that would be one. The other one would be Conor Benn's right hand. See, here's the thing. Conor Benn is called the Destroyer, and it's for a reason. And the reason is that right hand. When he hits you with that right hand, he destroys most of those opponents. I mean, this guy has gone into fights and he has dominated opponents with that right hand. That right hand is dangerous. Trust me when I tell you, when that right hand connects and he hits it right on the button, a lot of those opponents went to sleep. The thing is about Conor Benn, say what you want about him, but that guy truly is the destroyer. That guy will truly go into a ring and wreak havoc on anybody. It doesn't matter. You have to take Conor Benn seriously as a threat, and his biggest weapon is that right hand. The other thing about Conor Benn, he's an excellent counterpuncher. Conor Benn, here's the thing, he's very, very patient. Unlike Chris Eubank Jr., who's going 120 miles per hour charging forward, Conor Benn's waiting. He's waiting for the moment to attack. He's waiting for his opponent to make a mistake. And sometimes he even forces mistakes with his feints. As an opponent tries to charge forward, he'll throw some feints. The opponent will fall for it. He'll throw some bait. The opponent will catch it. And then basically Conor Benn will go in there and land a knockout punch. The thing is about Conor Benn, he's a very, very good counterpuncher, and he's very, very patient. I will give him that. The other thing about Conor Benn, body shots. He's got great body shots. There was a fight where he knocked down a guy twice through those some body shots, and even when he's not knocking him down, you can tell those body shots hurt. They're not the best feeling in the world when you get hit in the body, let alone by Conor Benn. So, with that being said, what are the weaknesses for Conor Benn? Well, the weaknesses for Conor Benn are this. He's very telegraphed. See, one of the combos that he likes to throw is start off with the left and then go to the right. So 1-2 straight. It's very simple. But the thing is about Conor Benn, he's not the most versatile fighter. See, he has like the combos already in his head. He has certain combos that he goes to, and a lot of them end with the right hand. And if you can minimalize that, then you can potentially make it a tough fight for Conor Benn. The other thing about Conor Benn is he lets his foot off the gas. Unlike Chris Eubank Jr., who's going 120 miles per hour, there's moments where Conor Benn lets his foot off the gas. There's moments where he takes rounds off. There's moments where he has moments to attack and he doesn't. That's the thing with Conor Benn. Conor Benn, he'll let his foot off the gas. He'll take rounds off. Basically, Conor Benn will take breaks in the middle of fights. He'll take short breaks. And with somebody like Chris Eubank Jr., who's going to be in your face from round 1 to round 12, if it gets that far, you can't afford to take breaks. The other thing about Conor Benn is I feel like sometimes he gets a little bit too careless as well. Even though he is a cautious fighter, he is very patient. He's been knocked down before. There was a fight he got knocked down twice in one round, and that was the first round. He got caught with a right hand, and he got knocked down. and then he got taken onto the ropes and he got knocked down, which by the way, that is another weakness for Conor Benn. He has a tendency of leaning up against those ropes and leaning into the corner. See, when an opponent can push them back, for example, Peter Dobson was able to push him back a little bit against those ropes. And when he was able to do that, he was able to have a lot of success. And there was a fight where he got knocked down, his opponent pushed him up against those ropes and was able to knock him down. Conor Benn pushes himself against those ropes. He puts himself on the back foot sometimes. Sometimes the reaction he has is flight and not fight. And then last but not least, he stays stationary sometimes. Conor Benn has footwork, but sometimes he'll stay stationary. Sometimes he'll be in that ring and he'll stay still and he won't move around and he'll give his opponents opportunities to punch him. He'll give his opponents opportunities to land free shots. And he can't be doing that against somebody like Chris Eubank Jr. Because if Chris Eubank Jr. lands one of those power shots, he's in for a rude awakening. So with that being said, what are the keys for both fighters and how are both fighters going to win this fight? Well, the first key I would say for Chris Eubank Jr. would be to pressure him every single round, from round 1 to round 12, just like you have been doing your entire career. You need to pressure him. You need to be relentless. You need to push him up against those ropes. You need to force Conor Benn to make a choice. Are you going to try to survive or are you going to try to fight? That is what Chris Eubank Jr. is going to have to do. That is the first key. The second key is to constantly stick him with that jab. He doesn't react too well with the jab, Conor Benn. And I think that if Chris Eubank Jr. can set everything up with the jab, which is using the jab to test your range, using the jab to set up combinations, using the jab to force Conor Benn to make a mistake. If you can do that, if you can constantly stick that jab in Conor Benn's face, he's going to have to react in some type of way. And that is when Chris Eubank Jr. can attack. And then last but not least, he's going to have to capitalize on when Conor Benn is staying still, when he's not moving, when he's not using his footwork, when he's not moving around the ring. When he's staying still, Chris Eubank Jr. needs to capitalize on that. That is the perfect time to push Conor Benn back, to push him up against those ropes, to push him in the corner. Now, as far as Conor Benn, what are the keys that he needs to have to win this fight? Well, counter Eubank Jr. when he leans his head forward and he ducks it. When Eubank Jr. lowers his head, you hit him with that uppercut. You hit him with the power punches that you have knocked out a lot of guys with. You hit him with those punches. That's what I will say. And he will give you those moments. Even though he's been with Jonathan Banks and Jonathan Banks has been great for his career and he's been a more polished fighter, he will make those mistakes. If you can force him to make those mistakes, if you can use feints to force him to make those mistakes, then right when he makes that mistake, when he leaves his head open, when he leads it forward, you attack. And you don't think twice about it. The other thing that Conor Benn should do is force him to be careless. Chris Eubank Jr. throughout his career, he's been going 120 miles per hour. You know, he's throwing caution to the wind, but he's also been careless. There's been times where he's throwing wild hooks, wild punches, and he had to pay the price for it sometimes. So I will say Conor Benn needs to take advantage of those moments. He needs to force him to turn into the old Chris Eubank Jr. where he's throwing wild punches. And when he does that, Conor Benn needs to capitalize. And Conor Benn is a precise counterpuncher. And if he can hit him with one of those precise counters, then Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be in trouble. So I think that Conor Benn needs to force Chris Eubank Jr., maybe with feints, to open up. And then I would say use Chris Eubank Jr.'s footwork against him. When that footwork gets sloppy, force him to tangle on his own feet. Force him to fight with two left feet. And when he ends up basically making that mistake, when he ends up becoming not so balanced, that is the perfect chance for Conor Benn to attack. So for me, those would be the three keys that I would have for both of these fighters winning this fight. Now, if you go to the betting odds as to how did the experts have it, well, I'm going to be honest with you, the odds for this fight are pretty slim. When you go to FanDuel Sportsbook, they got Chris Eubank Jr. at minus 176, and then they have Conor Benn at plus 138. So the odds are slim, and obviously they're subject to change. The best method of victory, the favorite method of victory is Chris Eubank Jr. by, actually, I lied. It's Chris Eubank Jr. by knockout or TKO at plus 145. The least likely outcome besides the draw is Conor Benn by points or decision at plus 650, which I find very, very interesting. So with that being said, how do I see this fight going? I mean, honestly, it's a 50-50 fight. Chris Eubank Jr. has been looking like a menace ever since pairing with Jonathan Banks. Conor Benn hasn't been in the ring in over a year. So that might obviously sway the betting odds one way or another. One's undefeated, One has three losses. One's been knocked out before. The other one has yet to lose. So when I look at this, who do I have win this fight? Well, inactivity is going to be a big factor in my opinion, and because of that, because of Chris Eubank Jr., I think having a better corner, I'm gonna go Chris Eubank Jr. by unanimous decision. What I think is gonna happen is I think Conor Benn's gonna start off hot, but I think that Chris Eubank Jr. is also going to minimalize some of Conor Benn's best tools, which would be um potentially the hooks. I think he's gonna minimalize Conor Benn's right hand, and I think what's gonna happen is when he minimalizes that, I think Chris Eubank Jr. is going to get more and more relentless. He's going to get more and more aggressive. He's going to push the pressure more. He's going to push Conor Benn up against the ropes. And I think Conor Benn, instead of fighting, I think he's going to be forced to survive. And I think that Conor Benn is going to be a lot really cautious in this fight. And he's not going to throw the punches needed to win this fight. And I think that we're going to see Chris Eubank Jr. in an impressive unanimous decision. I think it's going to be like 9 rounds to 3, maybe 10 rounds to 2. But I think that once Chris Eubank Jr. starts realizing that Conor Benn isn't going to attack, he's going to constantly put the pressure on him. Conor Benn's going to be forced to survive, which is why I don't think we're going to get the knockout because Conor Benn isn't going to take any risks or he's not going to leave Chris Eubank Jr. with any openings to get the knockout. I just think that Conor Benn is going to bite more than he can chew in this fight, and I think Chris Eubank Jr. is going to get the unanimous decision victory. But overall, we're gonna have to wait and see. And obviously, April 26th, Tottenham Stadium in England, that's gonna be the put it this way, that is going to be the answer to all of our questions. It's all about how Conor Benn's gonna react in this fight. That's the biggest important factor in this fight. Is he going to survive or is he going to fight back? And if he fights back, I think Conor Benn can win this fight. If he tries to survive, I give it to Chris Eubank Jr. But I mean, these guys, they're carrying a lot. They're carrying like hatred. Obviously, they're carrying the legacy of their father's last names. And overall, we're getting Eubank versus Benn 3 through the Suns. And I can't wait. I've been waiting for this fight for 3 years. It got postponed or it got canceled the last time. I can't wait. Obviously, these two got bad blood. They don't like each other. That means when they go into the ring, we're bound to get an epic war. And so, with that being said, that's what I hope we get. I hope we get an epic war. I hope we get a close fight. I hope we get a fight of the year. But I just see Chris Eubank Jr. win this fight, and I just see him having a very, very impressive unanimous decision. But I could be wrong. Obviously, my predictions haven't been the best recently, but I could be wrong. And overall, we're just gonna have to wait and see. But until then, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the YouTube, the podcast, the social medias. Subscribe, follow, like, all of that. Make sure y'all engage with the content. And then, last but not least, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.